Hey everybody, Elia here with another video of our top 10 best and worst of series. Our videos on the top 10 best and worst of Ocarina of Time and the follow-up for Breath of the Wild did so great that we reached out to our fans to ask what game we should cover next, and an overwhelming majority of you chose Majora's Mask. We absolutely love Majora's Mask. Similar to both Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild, we think Majora's Mask is a masterpiece, especially considering it was only made because of an agreement between Aonuma and Miyamoto that Aonuma could work on a second Zelda game for the N64 under the condition that he could complete it within a year. Seeing as most Zelda games are delayed until Nintendo feels that they are ready, it is interesting to see a Zelda game that the entire purpose of it was to be rushed in order to finish it on time. Because of this and some other design choices, while Majora's Mask may be still seen as a masterpiece and is at the top of many favorite Zelda games lists, it isn't perfect. It was certainly an interesting experience replaying through Majora's Mask with the sole purpose of finding favorite and least favorite aspects of it. Typically in a game that is regarded as a 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 by most review sites, it's hard to find any serious flaws. Otherwise, well, it wouldn't really be 10 out of 10 if it did have a serious flaw, would it? Because of this, a couple of the flaws that have been found may seem like small nitpicks or minor complaints, but that's what you get with a game that is held in such high regard. However, a couple of these are a major issue that could have made the game even better if fixed. So here are the top 10 best and worst of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Remember, if you're a fan of videos like this, please give this video a like, subscribe, then comment below letting us know what games you would like us to see us cover in the future. On this video, like the others, we will be alternating between the good and the bad. With all that out of the way, let's begin. Number 10. Transformations and Masks. One of the things that makes Majora's Mask stand out among the other games is that it is the only game to allow you to transform into different races. Transforming into the Deku, Goron, or Zora isn't just a simple character swap. Each race has their own special abilities, attacks, and defenses. Each transformation mask has dungeons uniquely designed with those special abilities in mind, and the final main dungeon, Stone Tower Temple, makes you cleverly use all three masks as well as your normal Hylian form to progress through the dungeon. If you get tired of using the transformation masks, you can play around with 20 other masks that have their own unique abilities, such as turning you invisible, allowing your face to be a replacement for a bomb in case you run out, run faster, and dance? Many of these masks involve their own side quests as well, which we will get to later.
The Overworld. In some ways, this may conflict with my previous positive, but the Overworld in Majora's Mask, Termina Field, is very different than the main locations of the game. Great Bay, Icona, Snowhead, Woodfall, and especially Clocktown are all great locations, and are filled with a lot of interesting things to do. However, Termina Field is the complete opposite. It seems like just an empty space of land to get from one place to another. Aside from a few side quests and to get to your destination, you have no real reason to search around Termina Field. Other Zelda games have had similar issues, and Skyward Sword didn't even have a Hyrule Field to search around. But Termina's isn't the worst. It's just not that great either. It's just there, and that's it. I will say, it is interesting to travel underneath Termina Field. I kind of wish more things like this was present in the game. Traveling from Clocktown through the sewers and coming out at the Astral Observatory on the other side of Termina Field is pretty cool. If more locations experimented with this interconnectedness, that would be pretty great and could add more to the overworld itself. Or in this case, the underworld. Think about what we got with Subrosia, being the underworld for Holodrum in Oracle of Seasons.
The music. For me, the music of Ocarina of Time is some of the best in the series. Elements from these songs have been incorporated into almost every Zelda game released after. Even Breath of the Wild makes use of songs from Lon Lon Ranch, the Spirit Temple, and many others. I mention this because Majora's Mask makes use of some of our favorites from Ocarina of Time and adds some that are just as good and in some cases, even better. It also gives us a few variations of these songs. We can play them with our usual ocarina, or choose between Deku pipes, Goron drums, or a Zora guitar. These instruments are even incorporated into some of the side quests.
Beneath the Well. This can be a quick one, there honestly isn't too much to say. If we take a look at all of the dungeons and mini-dungeons from the 3D Zelda games, this one is the worst. Personally, we feel that Nintendo just felt they needed to reuse some of the textures and other assets from the Bottom of the Well and Shadow Temple in Ocarina of Time. In doing so, it seemed like an almost pointless fetch quest. Though it does lead to the Stone Tower Temple, which in my opinion, is one of the best Zelda dungeons of any Zelda game, for reasons that I listed earlier on how it incorporates all of the transformation masks and many different items. It doesn't just rely on a single item found within the dungeon for everything, which I guess is a bonus thing for the list of best things about Majora's Mask. Side quests and NPCs make the world feel more alive. Remember when we said the time mechanic did have some positives? Well, this is what I was meaning. Because of Majora's Mask's time system and the way the entire world is built around it, when you play the game, suddenly the world feels like a living, breathing world. Especially inside Clocktown. Different events take place at different times at different locations. You can find NPCs going about their day. In some ways, the way the side quests all seem to connect with each other makes it much more interesting than many other games. Ocarina of Time had taste of this with the treasure chest game only being open at night and the grave digging game only being available at very specific hours. Majora's Mask takes that concept to the next level, but it isn't just the time system. The characters are all very cleverly thought out.
Too short, and only 4 to 5 main dungeons. Coming off of Ocarina of Time, which had 9 main dungeons, 10 if you count the past and present sections of the Spirit Temple as separate dungeons, and 3 mini-dungeons. Majora's Mask only had 4 main dungeons, but it did have several mini-dungeons in the form of the Swamp Spider House, Pirate's Fortress, Iconic Castle, and others, which we will get to later. This basically comes down to the time restraints Nintendo had with Majora's Mask. A lot of the dungeon designs and puzzles found within the game was said by Nintendo to be reused from the planned expansion of Ocarina of Time, known as Zelda Majora. However, the 4 main dungeons we did get ended up being very impressive, with a quote from Aonuma saying that the dungeons of Majora's Mask were designed for expert Zelda players, which explains the more complex dungeon design. In the end, as great as the dungeons were, it still feels lacking, especially when compared to other 3D Zelda games.
A new world. When you think about the Zelda series and saving the world, you think of saving Hyrule, which isn't bad. Death Mountain, Hyrule Castle, Lake Hylia, and the Lost Woods are more familiar to me than some parts of my own city. However, from time to time, it is nice to see something new. Holodrum, Labrina, Hytopia, the Drablands, Cohelant Island, and a few more. When a game takes place outside of Hyrule, it is usually in handheld games. In fact, the only 3D Zelda game to take place outside of Hyrule is in Majora's Mask, where we are introduced to Termina. Conflicting sources will have you debating on if it actually exists or if it's a fictitious land. However, despite what you may have read from a book, Aonuma, the director of the game, is on record saying that Termina is in fact a physical location located next to Hyrule. No, it isn't all of a dream, and no, Link isn't dead. We have another video you can check out that goes in depth explaining this, with interviews and quotes from Aonuma, Miyamoto, and others at Nintendo who worked on the game. Now, with that out of the way, Termina gave us Clocktown, one of the absolute best towns from any Zelda game. As we mentioned earlier, it actually feels like a living, breathing location. Termina is one of the only times we see a Goron in a cold location, a complete opposite of how we're used to seeing them. Continuing this, Termina essentially takes everything we know about Hyrule and gives us a new unique twist that makes it stand out among many of the other locations and the several different variations of Hyrule that we have seen. Number 4. Removal of the warp songs. One of my favorite things about Ocarina of Time was the different warp songs you would learn. Each song had a purpose, and was also a clever use of fast travel. In Majora's Mask, instead of giving us even more memorable songs, they were all replaced with a single Song of Soaring. Majora's Mask does give us a song that is required to enter each dungeon: the New Wave Bossa Nova, the Goron Lullaby, the Sonata of Awakening, and the Elegy of Emptiness. A couple of these songs are great, but personally, they don't stand up to their Ocarina of Time counterparts. And aside from Elegy of Emptiness, the game only allows you to use what I'll call the temple songs a couple of different times. Whereas in Ocarina of Time, all of the different warp songs came in handy a number of different times. It just seemed like a waste for the Song of Soaring to replace all of the warp songs. And in its place, we're given a few songs that have very limited use. Yes, this is me nitpicking, but as I mentioned at the beginning, when a game is regarded as near perfect and mostly receives 9s and 10s, it is a bit hard to find things that are serious issues with it.
Running out of time. Nothing in Majora's Mask is more annoying than being in the middle of a dungeon or a boss fight and noticing you're about to run out of time. This can be easily avoided by being more aware of the time system and adequately preparing, but sometimes it just slips your mind until it's too late. Even if you're outside one of the dungeons, if you may show up for a specific side quest only to realize you've barely missed it and now you need to start the 3 days over just to patiently wait or until the perfect moment. Even if you're outside of the dungeons, if you may show up for a specific side quest only to realize you've barely missed it and now you need to start 3 days over again just to patiently wait until the perfect moment. The time system does make the world feel more alive, and there are some positives to it, but we'll get to those further down our list.
Number 1, the lore and mystery. The Happy Mask Salesman, Majora's Mask, the Deku Butler's son, the Fierce Deity, the Moon Children, Termina itself, the Moon's Face, the Ancient Tribe, the Hexing Rituals, the Goddess of Time, and well, I could go on and on. Majora's Mask is filled with endless lore and mystery, none of which has really been explained. The Hyrule Encyclopedia says it was all created when the Skull Kid put on Majora's Mask. However, Nintendo themselves has retconned many things in the Hyrule Historia and the official encyclopedia. They even said not all of it should be taken as 100% fact. The game itself actually disproves the book, and we have the creators of the game, Aonuma and Miyamoto, mentioning that Termina is actually a real location located next to Hyrule. If we move on to the Fierce Deity mask, we have Aonuma at one point saying he believes it is the emotion and spirits of all of those that Link has helped in Termina. We have another developer from the game saying similar to the other transformation masks, it embodies the spirit of an ancient hero. We can move to Majora's Mask, the manga, which is 100% not canon and on many occasions completely contradicts the in-game facts. It tells us Majora was an ancient beast, that the fierce deity made dance until it died, and the mask was carved from its body. People at Nintendo have said the mask was carved out of wood from a tree. We can continue with the Happy Mask Salesman, who appears in Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Oracle of Ages, though it is debated if the one in the Oracle of Ages is in fact the same mask salesman or a new salesman. And of course we have the Goddess of Time. The point is, Majora's Mask gives us more potential theories and discussions than any other Zelda games combined. The lore and mystery of the world and its characters keeps fans asking questions and digging for secrets almost 20 years after its release. And we will likely be asking those same questions or possibly new questions in another 20 years. Out of all of the worlds that have been visited outside of Hyrule, Termina is at the top of the list for most fans to return to. We've seen what Hyrule looks like hundreds and even thousands of years after Ocarina of Time. So what would Termina look like after those same lengths of time? Well, these are our top 10 best and worst of Majora's Mask. What game would you like me to focus on next? Comment below and let us know, as well as what you love and hate about Majora's Mask. Remember to please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more videos like this, and if you really want to help support us, head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse where you can have shoutouts during videos, give us topics and concepts for future videos, voice on videos yourself, join as a guest on our podcast, or simply have your own questions answered during the podcast. Until next time, thank you for watching.